It was supposed to be an easy case. A quick search for a spoiled rich girl who disappeared after a night out partying. Just another missing person who took off on a whim and would turn up in a few days. At least that's what I expected when I took on the case of the missing heiress, Alexandra Beckett. But this case turned out to be anything but ordinary. The call came in early Saturday morning. I dragged myself out of bed after hitting snooze twice, cursing the early weekend interruption. I expected it was another false alarm or petty theft, nothing that required my immediate attention. But the anxious voice on the other end belonged to none other than Walter Beckett, patriarch of the Beckett family and one of the wealthiest, most influential figures in Bayport. His daughter Alexandra, heiress to the Beckett fortune, had vanished without a trace. I sat up straight, shaking off any last remnants of sleep. A missing Beckett was serious business. The family wielded enormous power and influence in Bayport for generations. Their sprawling estate and opulent parties provided plenty of glimpses into their luxurious lifestyle. But it came with dark rumors too, whispers of Mr. Beckett's ties to the criminal underworld, and the family's private army of fixers to keep their secrets. And now the sole Beckett heir, 20-year-old Alexandra, had disappeared after spending Thursday night out clubbing with friends. Her worried father wanted answers fast, insisting the Bayport PD put their top detective on the case immediately. Meaning me. I assured Mr. Beckett I'd find his daughter and hung up. This high-profile case required delicacy and discretion, neither of which defined me or my unconventional methods. But the Becketts meant business in this town. And that meant I needed to solve this case quickly, before the family took justice into their own hands. Throwing on jeans and a t-shirt, I grabbed my worn leather jacket, the only detective-looking thing I owned, and headed out. My first stop was the Beckett estate to interview Alexandra's family and friends, see if they noticed anything off about her behavior recently. The sprawling Victorian mansion loomed over me as I walked up the paved drive, a physical representation of the family's imposing presence in Bayport. Walter Beckett greeted me in his study, appearing far older than his 50-some years. His eyes carried heavy dark circles that matched his black tailored suit. "Detective, I trust you'll be discreet," he said by way of greeting. "This matter must be handled delicately." I nodded. "Of course. I know how important your privacy is." Time to play the game, reassuring him without outright promising to cover anything up. Mr. Beckett relaxed slightly and provided the basics. His daughter Alexandra left home Thursday afternoon around 4 p.m. to go shopping and out clubbing with friends. She didn't come home that night and missed a 10 a.m. hair appointment Friday morning. Her best friend, Scarlett Brooks, said Alexandra uncharacteristically left the club alone just before midnight without saying goodbye. And no one had seen or heard from her since. Her phone went straight to voicemail. "My daughter is willful," Mr. Beckett explained. "But she knows better than to make us worry like this." I feared the worst. I needed more details. Who were the friends she went out with Thursday night? Anyone new or unusual? Just Scarlett and Ashley, her two closest friends. They've been inseparable for years. No boyfriends, relationships, or anything out of the ordinary. Mr. Beckett bristled. "My daughter does not have romantic attachments, if that's what you're implying." Clearly a touchy subject. Time to tread carefully. "I only mean, any new friends, interests, or changes in habits could provide clues about where she went." I interviewed Scarlett and Ashley next. They said nothing seemed off about their friend. The only unusual part of the night was Alexandra leaving solo without saying goodbye. She'd never done that before. "She was just gone all of a sudden," Scarlett said, tearing up. "If I'd known it was the last time I'd see her," she trailed off, sobbing quietly. Ashley comforted her friend before turning to me. "We figured Lexi got tired and went home early for once. Or that she'd met some guy. Never thought she'd just disappear." I ended the interview when it became clear they had no other useful details. Dead end. Time for a canvas. I instructed officers to show Alexandra's photo around at the club she left and check if any witnesses spotted her. But hours of asking produced few leads. Our only clue was a bartender who thought he saw her get into a car out front, but no positive ID. Strike two. The case only got stranger from there. When I stopped by Alexandra's favorite upscale boutiques the next day, clerks recognized her from my photo. But none remembered her coming in Thursday. Her credit card showed no activity since Wednesday either. So where does she really go that night? And who was she with? Because I knew one thing for certain: Alexandra Beckett did not simply vanish alone into thin air. Something or someone made a rich heiress with 24/7 security disappear without a trace. This was no random abduction. By Sunday the case stalled. Beckett was ready to take over the investigation through his own channels, but I convinced him to give me one more day, before he pulled the plug and went nuclear. I needed to make a bold move, quickly. That night I broke into Alexandra's room. I knew I was risking my badge if caught, but my gut said there was more to find here. I sorted through shelves, cabinets, closets. Found nothing until I reached under her mattress and pulled out a spiral notebook. Jackpot. It was a diary, and it told quite a tale. The real Alexandra Beckett bore little resemblance to the polished heiress presented to the world. She described parties with drinks and drugs, escaping her prison of a home, strong desire for independence, resenting her family's heavy hand, and a new secret boyfriend named Damien she met at a dive bar who her family would never approve of. Now we had a lead. Finding Damien took one unauthorized look at Alexander's phone records. Soon I had a Damien Miles, 25, with an rap sheet of drug and assault charges. Not exactly Prince Charming. I tracked him to a rundown apartment in a rough neighborhood, banged on the door and flashed my badge. A surprised and twitchy young man answered. One look at the photo of Alexandra and his eyes whitened with recognition. Gotcha. The quick search found her bracelet and earrings tucked in a drawer. My evidence he was with her that night. It didn't take much encouragement for him to talk. He admitted seeing Alexandra the night she disappeared. Said they partied, did some drugs, and went back to his place. They fought and Damien shoved her around in anger, but claimed she eventually stormed out alone. He hadn't seen her since. My gut said he was hiding something. I shoved him against the wall, arm pressed to his throat. What really happened? Where is she? I demanded forcefully. I don't know. I swear. He cried out, trembling. He seemed genuinely terrified of me or whoever else was really behind this. I let him go with a warning, but I knew he wasn't the mastermind here. One more dead end. I now had 0 leads again and the clock ticking down. Beckett's deadline was almost up. Once the family took over, the trail would disappear for good. Whatever shadowy handlers the family employed would make sure of that. I only had one last hunch to follow. And it meant breaking the law one more time. But I was committed to finding the truth. That night I returned to the Beckett estate. I knew the grounds well by now, the patrols, shift changes, and security weak spots. Getting inside unseen was easy. I made my way silently through the east wing, using ducts and hidden passages used by servants to remain invisible. I entered Walter Beckett's study through a concealed door. It betrayed no sign of my lockpick or the hidden levers I'd manipulated to get inside. Now I just had to find some clue about what Beckett was really hiding. I quickly searched drawers, cabinets, closets and more. Nothing suspicious yet. Until I noticed the gilt-framed painting on the far wall was askew. And behind it, barely visible, an outline of a safe. Bingo. Cracking the safe took finesse. But soon I had it open to reveal stacks of cash, documents and photos. Photos that changed everything about this case. They showed Alexandra bound and gagged in various locations. Some sort of kidnapping proof of life photos. And more shots showed Walter Beckett himself conversing with shady underworld figures, paying them off while pointing to photos of his daughter. The conclusion was inescapable. Beckett himself had arranged his daughter's kidnapping. It was staged, a fake disappearance controlled by her father for unknown purposes. My blood boiled at the deception and audacity. Just then voices sounded down the hall. The study doorknob rattled. I resealed the safe in seconds and slipped back through the hidden passage unseen, photo evidence in hand. Confronting Beckett was dangerous. But the next morning I took the evidence to the district attorney, who was shocked but believed me. Beckett was brought in for thorough questioning. He denied everything at first. But eventually he broke down and admitted to masterminding the disappearance to protect his daughter from outside threats. Alexandra was being safely hidden away with hired guards at an undisclosed remote location. Out of his control, she'd gotten wild and defiant lately. He claimed he did it for her own safety. It was a tailspin with just enough threads of truth to seem plausible. But I knew there was more he wasn't admitting. The DA couldn't hold Beckett long based only on my word and questionable evidence. We still lacked proof of an actual crime. Beckett walked, but his reputation and freedom now hung by a delicate thread. Finding Alexandra became even more critical. Beckett refused to give up where she was being held. But I continued hunting down leads relentlessly, determined to uncover the truth. The breaks finally came 10 days later. The guard I bribed led me to the remote estate where Alexandra was being kept outside Bayport. I arrived, backup in tow, and rescued her from the prison-like security. She was unhurt, just angry and confused. Perfectly playing the victim. But getting Alexandra alone and earning her trust told the real story. Yes, she'd gotten wild and defiant, as Daddy said. But it was in response to years of manipulation and control from him, molding her to be a proper heiress. Things escalated until she threatened to emancipate herself and cut ties with the family. So Beckett concocted the fake kidnapping as leverage. Proof of threats to her safety so she'd stay under his thumb. Photos and ransom demands were manufactured fakes. It was all a desperate ploy for control. Alexandra agreed to testify against her father. The pieces finally came together to take down Walter Beckett. He was indicted on charges of obstruction, false imprisonment, money laundering, and more. With Beckett in prison and Alexandra cooperating, even the shadowy network protecting him collapsed. The dark secrets underpinning the Beckett family's reputation and wealth surfaced as we exposed decades of lies and cover-ups. I know I took big risks that could have ended my career. But exposing the truth here was worth it. The famous Beckett name is now infamous, their empire fallen. Alexandra is free and coming into her own. As for me, I keep hunting for the truth by any means necessary. Because no one else will. This case proved again that if I want justice, I have to make it happen. I don't mind getting my hands dirty if it means taking down criminals who hide behind their power and influence. That's my duty. No matter what the personal cost.